What's up, vapors? Thanks for checking out Daily Vape TV. My name is Nick, and welcome to another episode of Versus. Today, we're going to be taking a look at 4 brand new pod systems. So this is round 2 of our pod system showdown. I know it's been a while since we did our first one, but there's been so many new pods on the market, I really felt the need that I had to come out with this video. And with that, I've got 4 new ones to take a look at today. We've got the Zoer, the Miley, the Sol, and the Nicko Stick. So a few quick things to clarify before we get going here. First, I get a ton of comments on the first video about the Fix pod system. Now, I have a full review of that available if you guys want to go and check that out, but they have since sold out to Big Tobacco, and therefore I just really can't bring myself to promote that type of product. Second, by no means is this a final review or final say on any one of these pod systems. I am still kind of currently in the testing phases. This is just basically an overview and comparison of the 4 that I've been taking a look at and testing out lately. And third, all the pods you're going to see today are closed pod systems. I've decided I'm going to be doing another video on open pod systems as well, but that'll come at a later date. Alright guys, so the first thing we're going to do is give you a basic size comparison and a better look at these pod systems by diving down to the close-up view and taking a better look at these devices. Alright guys, so here are all 4 pods lined up next to each other so you get a feel of what they look like. Let's start off with the Zoer real quick. Just show you the outside here. It kind of has an interesting oval sort of shape overall, and it has these nice little rubber grips on the front and back and either side, which is a nice touch there. Has the micro USB charging port at the bottom and a little indication light on this side here. Nothing on the back, however, and the pod itself has a nice feel to it. You can see, a little bit of juice on the outside of the pod, which is definitely not uncommon. And it's fairly easy to see the remaining juice in your pod there. You can also see it right through the mouthpiece, although it doesn't really show up on camera. Next, we have the Sol, which has an indication light right in the O right there in the Sol logo. That turns on when you're puffing on it, which is kind of cool. Kind of adds a little artsy element. Has the shiny sides to it, which are definitely a fingerprint magnet, but you're really not going to notice it all that much. Overall, very average size, kind of rounded corners and rounded overall top and bottom feel. Plus the micro USB down at the bottom here. This edge is a little bit on the sharper side, which doesn't, affect it all that much. You're not really going to be, touching that part all that often. And then you can see the pod up at the top here, which is slightly transparent. You can kind of see through it. Again, a little bit of juice on the outside of the pod. Again, not very uncommon with this device. And you can see the contact pins on the bottom of those pods there, nice and big. No problems with connectivity whatsoever. And the mouthpiece right there. Next, we have the Nicko Stick, and as you can see, it has branding on this side and this side here. It used to have a branding down here at the bottom, but it wore off. You have your light indication, which shines when you're puffing on it, and this little cutout end right at the top here, so you can see how much juice is left in your pod. You can see a pretty average shape to it, kind of a rounded cornered rectangular shape with the micro USB slot at the bottom there for charging. And taking a look at the pod, you can see pretty average size and shape once again, kind of looks like a Juul pod, and the mouthpiece very similar once again to the Juul. Last but not least, we have the Miley with the Miley logo engraved right there. 4 dots at the bottom, which are LEDs that show your battery life, and the last is a puff indication. You can see the size and shape, a little bit thinner than the rest, but it has the proprietary charging system. A little bit thinner as well, as you can see here, and you have the little window up at the top that shows your juice in your pod, which is kind of nice. Again, very average kind of pods, kind of similar to the Juul, and very similar as well on the bottom. However, this one is very easily hackable with this little rubber stopper right there at the bottom section. You can remove those with little tweezers or something and fill up your pods with your own juice, and there you can see the mouthpiece as well. So hopefully this gives you an idea of how big each pod system is. I mean, I have pretty big hands here, but each one is fairly small. A little bit taller with the Sol here, as you can see, just sticks up ever so slightly. And the shortest one is the Miley. The thickest one is the Zoer. Obviously, it has this big fat battery in there, and there's really no denying that this one is the biggest, thickest, and the heaviest overall. But let's go ahead and go back to the main screen, and we'll talk about these ones some more. Alright guys, so I've got 5 different categories in which to judge these pod systems: battery life, pod capacity, flavor, the X factor, which is my favorite thing about each individual device, and finally price. So with that, we're going to start off with battery life. So the top contender in the battery life category is the Zoor. This one has a 500 milliamp hour battery, which is very, very nice. For all you guys out there looking for an all-day sort of pod system, this one is definitely going to be for you as long as you don't mind a little bit of added bulk. Next up is the Sol, coming in at 350 milliamp hours, which is very respectable because it is very, very lightweight, and the size is pretty much comparable to something like the MyJet. Really not any bigger than that, and it's, like I said, very lightweight, very kind of comfortable to hold on to all day long, and it's going to last a while. Next up is the Nicko Stick with a 310 milliamp hour battery, which is very close behind the Sol in that aspect, and it's even a little tiny bit smaller as well, very similar in the weight department, and still very comfortable to use. And last but not least, we have the 240 milliamp hour Miley, which is just ever so slightly less than half of the Zoor battery life, and it's only slightly more than the Juul, which has a 200 milliamp hour battery. So this one, if I had to compare it overall, you're not getting a lot of benefit as far as the battery is concerned over something like the Juul for a similar price point. So the next category we're going to talk about is pod capacity. Now there's 2 tied for first place in this particular category. We're talking about the Sol and the Zoor coming in at 2 milliliters. These both have a 2 mil capacity, but you really couldn't tell just by looking at it. Honestly, I feel like the Zoor looks like it should have a 2.5 or maybe even larger capacity, whereas the Sol probably even 1.5 mil if I had to guess. But with that, they both claim to have a 2 mil capacity. I have not done any sort of testing. I haven't broken any of the pods open or anything like that, but that is what the manufacturer claims on their websites. Coming in at nearly half that amount, we have the 1.1 milliliter Nicko Stick. Now, this one is a little bit disappointing. I was hoping that the pods would be at least 1.5 mils. However, they're only 1.1, so it's still better than something like the Juul with 0.9 mils roughly. So as far as I'm concerned, it's going to last a little bit longer, maybe a day or a day and a half on a pod if you're exclusively using this device. And coming in at a mere 0.9 milliliters, we have the Miley once again. So once again, the Miley is the worst in this category with 0.9 mils of juice in their pods, and I was a little bit disappointed to read that because I feel like these look like they should have at least 1.5 Juul pods worth of juice in them, yet it's only 0.9 mil. So the next category we're going to talk about is flavors. The Zoor pod system has a very eclectic variety of different flavors you could choose from. You have the mint ice, which is what I'm vaping on right now, and it's kind of a cool menthol with a little hint of mint, kind of like an Icebreaker's mint or something like that. Very kind of cool menthol-y mint, which is really good. You know, I like it. Next, we have the apple flavor, which is really quite unique because it's a sour apple candy, very similar to like a Jolly Rancher. It's really darn good, and I've never seen any other pod system even attempt this one. Next, we have cake, which is kind of a vanilla cake batter. It's just a generic sort of desserty flavor. You know, every kind of pod system has their own blend of this. You know, they try to do some sort of dessert. And last but not least, we have sweets, which I was really confused about at first because I had no idea what it was meant to be. But I tasted it, and you basically just get a handful of candy. That's kind of what it tastes like, just shoving a whole bunch of candy in your face. So the one thing the Zoor pod system lineup is missing is a tobacco flavor. Now, that's part of the reason people try pod systems in the first place, is to try to get off cigarettes. Now, I really feel like they're missing out with that, and I think they made a big mistake by not including one. Next up, we have the fairly generic flavors of the Nicko Stick. First of all, the menthol flavor is a little bit on the weaker side, not my favorite, not really my type of thing. I like a big strong kick of menthol, and it's weak at best. Next, we have the fruit flavor. It's kind of a generic fruit, but it has a picture of a mango, but it's purple. Really don't get the picture there with that one, and I really just can't pick out what it's supposed to taste like, and it's just labeled fruit, and there's really no description, so unfortunately you're left pretty much in the dark. Next, there's the dessert flavor, which has a picture of a pie. I kind of get like an apple pie flavor out of it, but again, it's kind of on the weaker side. You really don't get a whole lot of flavor in general with the Nicko Stick, and that's pretty disappointing. The best one overall, however, is the tobacco. The tobacco is actually pretty darn good in my opinion. One of the better tobacco flavors that you get with these pod systems here, but still overall kind kind of weak. Next up, we have the Sol with a few shining gems on their flavor lineup. First of all, the spearmint flavor, which is very similar to the Fix, although it's a little bit weaker and it's really just doesn't have what I really was looking for, which is a nice blast of menthol. I feel like menthol would be a nice touch with this flavor here because it refreshes the palate. But next up, there's the mango flavor, which is based off the Mighty Vapors flavor, Mighty Mango, and it's pretty darn good, although it reminds me a lot of the Malaysian kind of flavors. I don't know if anyone out there has tried any of the UK juices that have mango in them. It really just has that hint of a Malaysian kind of style mango flavor, which I'm not a huge fan of, but I'm sure a lot of people out there will like. The best one, in my opinion, is the watermelon flavor, which is based off of Hulk Tears, also by Mighty Vapors. And that one is definitely my favorite because it's a sweet candy watermelon, and it really leaves nothing to be desired there. Last but not least, they have a tobacco flavor, which is pretty standard. It's a little bit on the sweeter side. Nothing to write home about, but nothing that bad as well. And last but not least, there's the Miley with a plethora of different flavor options as well. You have the Mighty Mint, which is one of my favorites because it's kind of gives you that fresh kind of breath feeling. It's almost like you just brushed your teeth or something, and it's got a nice kick of menthol as well. They have a summer strawberry flavor, which I have not tried myself, but I've heard really good things about. They also have a watermelon ice called Lush Ice, which, again, I have not tried. That is one of their newer releases, and it sounds pretty good. I'm going to have to pick myself up some of those pods because that is right up my alley. They have a tropical mango flavor, which is pretty good. It's kind of got that dry, earthy sort of mango that I'm also not a big fan of, and it doesn't really hold a candle to the Jewel flavor mango, but otherwise, you know, I'm sure some people out there will enjoy it. And last but not least, they have Cubano, which is definitely a gem with this one here because it's a nice, natural tasting tobacco. It's kind of dry and earthy, just a touch of sweetness, and a lot of people would say it reminds them of a cigar tobacco. Next is the X Factor, which is my favorite thing about each one of these pod systems. Let's start it off with the Zur, and that's the battery life. The battery life on this thing is spectacular. You're going to get days out of it, no problem. I don't use mine all the time, but I use it a lot in the car and when I'm just kind of sitting at work, just puffing away on the thing, and it lasts me a very, very long time. It's going to be great for those long road trips. Next is the Nicko Stick, and this one has a lanyard charger. Yeah, they are planning on coming out with these lanyard chargers, which is pretty darn cool if you ask me, because you get a little bit of extra battery right here in this little piece at the end, and you could just plug in your Nicko Stick anytime you want if you need a little bit of a charge here or there, and there you go. You can also wear it around your neck, and that way you have easy access to it if you want to puff. Next up, it's the Sol, and this one here is the most balanced out of all of these systems. It's basically an average size, shape, weight, all that stuff, but it has a few features that really make it stand out. The bigger pods, the bigger battery, the fact that you don't have to use an added charger, just a micro USB port to charge this thing, really make this one shine. And last but not least, there's the Miley with the best flavors. I really love the Miley flavors. The Mighty Mint is my favorite overall, but the mango is pretty darn good. Not quite as good as the Jewel mango in my opinion, but the Cubano is definitely going to be a fan favorite when it comes to converting smokers. And then they have their other two summer releases, which sound really good to me. I really want to seek some of those pods out and try them for myself. I know the Zur has some pretty good flavors as well, but I just really think that the Mighty Mint has the staying power that I'm looking for in a flavor for a pod system. Real quick, let's just go over the prices for all these pod systems here. First of all, the Zur costs $30 without pods or $60 with a 4-pack of pods. You can also get pod packs for $29. The Nicko Stick comes in at $36 with a 4-pack of pods included in the box, and replacement pods are going to cost you $20. The Sol is $40 with a 2-pack of pods included, and replacement 4-packs are going to cost you $25. And the Miley is $30 with no pods included, and replacement pods are going to cost you $18 for a 4-pack. So let's wrap this up. Which one is the clear winner in my eyes for this Versus episode? Well, I'm going to go with the Sol on this one because it has a bigger battery, bigger pods, nice convenient micro USB charging, and the size, shape, form factor is very average and very comfortable to hold on to. So in my opinion, I love the Sol. I think this one clearly wins in my eyes, and I really do highly recommend you guys try this one out. The Zur comes in a close second. However, it has that huge battery, so for convenience sake, I think this one is very good as well. the flavors on it are very good, and I do recommend you try this one just because of those flavors. You really get that unique pod vaping experience. The Miley comes in third in my book because it's got that sort of Juul feel to it. I really love the Juul, and this one feels very similar to it. It's the most compact out of all of these, and I do like the fact that it has a few different flavors in their lineup. So yeah, if you like the Juul, then you're probably going to want to try the Miley. Coming in last is the Nicko Stick. I'm just really not overly impressed with their flavor lineup, and that's what really did it in for me. I just can't get into any particular flavor that they offer, and the one factor that I said was the wow factor for this one, I can't even find on their official website, so I'm wondering if they even scrapped that project. So a little bit disappointed with the Nicko Stick. I had high hopes for it, but honestly, I'm probably going to say you can probably pass this one up. So that about wraps it up, guys. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe for more videos just like this. Don't forget to click that notification bell right next to the subscribe button if you want to be alerted whenever I upload videos. Also, if you have any further questions or comments or anything you want to say, just leave the comments right down there in the box below. I'd love to hear from you guys. Also, check out the advocacy and my social media links right down there in the box below. If you want to support me on Patreon, that would be amazing. Check it out. I've got a link right down there in the description as well. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and as always, vape on.